In the depths of South Boston, where dreams often fade against concrete walls, there's a story that will shake you to your core. Meet Tommy, just 12 years old, but his eyes tell a story of 1,000 battles. Every day after school, when other kids head home to their Xbox and Netflix, Tommy sets up his little stand of secondhand toys on Carson Street. Each item carefully arranged, each price tag written in wobbly child's handwriting. But this isn't about toys. This is about Sarah, Tommy's 8-year-old sister, lying in Boston Children's Hospital, fighting a battle that no child should ever have to face. The surgery she needs? 8200 $. Their mom's insurance? Denied. It's okay, Mommy, Tommy had said. I'll sell my toys. Such simple words, carrying the weight of a mountain. Then one ordinary Tuesday, a familiar figure stops at Tommy's stand. Joe Rogan, on his way to a comedy show, sees what most people rush past. He sees the determination in those small, calloused hands. He sees the love in those tired eyes. What happens next isn't just about money. It's about humanity at its rawest. It's about the moment when compassion meets purpose, when influence meets innocence. This is A Brother's Price. A story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about sacrifice, about loss, about what we're all capable of when family is on the line. Sometimes the biggest heroes stand just 4 feet tall, and sometimes hope shows up in the most unexpected ways. Watch this, and I dare you not to be changed forever. The story begins 6 months earlier, in the cramped kitchen of a third-floor walk-up where Maria Sullivan works her second job from home. Medical bills spread across the table like fallen autumn leaves. The soft glow of her laptop illuminates the deep worry lines etched across her face as she types medical transcriptions, her fingers dancing across the keyboard in a desperate rhythm against time. The walls around her tell the story of a family holding on photos of happier times, skull artwork, and the last family portrait taken before John Sullivan, her husband of 15 years, lost his battle with pancreatic cancer just 18 months ago. The apartment itself is a testament to their struggle, modest but meticulously maintained. Every corner showing signs of careful budgeting and creative solutions. The furniture is well worn but clean. The carpets threadbare but vacuumed daily. The windows adorned with curtains Maria sewed herself from discount fabric. It's the kind of home where love makes up for what money can't buy, where every scratch and dent has a story, and where even the smallest luxury is appreciated with profound gratitude. In the next room, Tommy sits cross-legged on the floor beside Sarah's bed, reading her favorite story about a brave knight who saves his kingdom. Sarah's golden curls, now thin from chemotherapy, spread across the pillow like a fading halo. Her collection of stuffed animals surrounds her like silent guardians, each one carefully positioned by Tommy's protective hands. The room, once painted princess pink at Sarah's insistence, now serves as a makeshift medical ward, with 4 stands and monitoring equipment creating an unsettling contrast to the cheerful butterfly decals on the walls. And then the knight raised his sword. Tommy's voice carries the story forward, even as Sarah drifts in and out of consciousness. He's memorized every word, knowing exactly when to pause, when to whisper, when to make the dramatic sounds that still bring a weak smile to his sister's pale face. His performances have become legendary among the hospital staff during Sarah's frequent stays. The boy who could turn mundane stories into magical adventures, who could make his sister laugh even on her worst days. The diagnosis had come like a thunderbolt on a clear day: acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The doctor spoke in gentle tones about treatment options, success rates, and cutting-edge procedures. But beneath their carefully chosen words lay an ugly truth. Without experimental surgery at a specialized clinic, Sarah's chances were slim. And the procedure, deemed experimental by their insurance company, wouldn't be covered. Dr. Matthews, Sarah's primary oncologist, had fought hard for them, spending countless hours on the phone with insurance representatives. But the answer remained unchanged: not covered under current policy guidelines. The day they received the final denial letter, Maria had retreated to the bathroom to cry, thinking her children couldn't hear her muffled sobs. But Tommy heard. He always heard, standing outside the bathroom door, his small fist pressed against the wood. He made a silent vow that would change not just his family's life, but an entire community's understanding of what love could accomplish. That night, after their mother had finally fallen asleep at the kitchen table, Tommy crept into his room and surveyed his kingdom. Action figures from birthdays past stood in formation on his shelves, each one holding a memory of better days. Limited edition comic books, still in their protective sleeves, lined his bookcase. Some signed by artists at conventions his father had taken him to, each one representing hours of shared passion and connection. Gaming consoles and controllers, earned through summers of yard work, sat silent beneath his TV, remembering countless hours of virtual adventures. He didn't hesitate. By morning, his room was half empty, and a plan was forming in his young but determined mind. The transformation of his space was methodical, almost surgical in its precision. Each item was carefully evaluated, not for its monetary worth, but for its potential to contribute to Sarah's salvation. Even his most treasured possessions, the ones that held the strongest memories of his father, were carefully wrapped and priced. Love, he was learning, sometimes meant letting go of the things you held most dear. The corner of Carson and West Broadway became his office, a choice made after careful observation of foot traffic patterns and consultation with local shopkeepers who had known his family for years. Every day after school, Tommy would wheel his red wagon full of treasures to his spot, setting up shop with the precision of a seasoned merchant. His makeshift storefront consisted of a folding table borrowed from church and a cardboard sign decorated with careful lettering. "Help save my sister. All items priced to sell." The sign had gone through several iterations, each version refined based on which seemed to draw the most attention from passers-by. The first few weeks were hard, harder than Tommy had ever imagined. People hurried past, avoiding eye contact, perhaps afraid to engage with the raw reality of a child's desperation. The weather wasn't always cooperative. Rain would force him to quickly pack up his precious inventory, and wind would scatter his carefully arranged displays. But Tommy learned. He learned to smile even when his feet ached and his fingers were numb from the cold. He learned to tell the story of each toy, infusing them with the magic of memory. He learned that people who stopped to listen often couldn't walk away without opening their wallets. Touched by the pure love driving this young entrepreneur, he developed a merchant's intuition, learning to read potential customers before they even reached his table. He knew which items to highlight for different people, showing action figures to young professionals who might be collectors, educational toys to parents with young children, vintage items to older folks who would recognize them from their own youth. Each sale was more than a transaction. It was a moment of connection, a chance to share his sister's story and spread awareness of their struggle. Words spread through the neighborhood like wildfire, carried on the winds of compassion and community spirit. The local coffee shop, run by elderly Mrs. O'Leary, who had lost her own daughter to cancer years ago, started sending him hot chocolate on cold afternoons. The newsstand owner, Mr. Patel, would watch his table when Tommy needed a bathroom break, treating the boy's mission with the same seriousness he gave to his own business. Even the tough guys from O'Malley's pub made it a point to stop by, buying toys they didn't need at prices they insisted on inflating. Regular customers began to emerge, each with their own way of contributing to Tommy's cause. There was the retired teacher who would spend her Sunday afternoons helping Tommy with his homework while he manned his stand. The local accountant who offered to track his sales and taught him basic bookkeeping. The art student who redesigned his sign, making it more eye-catching while maintaining his heartfelt simplicity. But time was moving faster than money, an unforgiving race against Sarah's deteriorating condition. Each hospital visit brought darker news, each medical report more urgent than the last. Tommy started staying out later, adding weekend mornings to his schedule, pushing himself to the limits of what a 12-year-old body could endure. His grades began to slip, but he couldn't bring himself to care. What good was an A in math if Sarah wasn't there to help him celebrate? His teachers noticed the change, of course. Mrs. Henderson, his English teacher, would often bring him sandwiches during his afternoon shifts, sitting with him during her free periods to help him catch up on assignments. Mr. Rodriguez, the gym teacher, modified Tommy's physical education requirements, recognizing that the hours of standing at his table were exercise enough. The school counselor, Dr. Barnes, tried to discuss the burden he was carrying, But Tommy would just shake his head with that same quiet determination. "It's not a burden," he'd say. "It's what brothers do." Maria watched her son's crusade with a heart split between pride and devastation. She tried to tell him it wasn't his responsibility, that she would find a way, that he should be enjoying his childhood instead of shouldering such adult concerns. But Tommy would just shake his head with that old soul wisdom that had settled into his eyes. "We're Sullivan's mom," he'd say, echoing his late father's words. "We take care of our own." Those words, his father's words, became a mantra of sorts, sustaining him through the longest days and coldest nights. John Sullivan had been that kind of man. The type who would give his last dollar to help a stranger, who taught his children that wealth was measured not in bank accounts but in the ability to make a difference in someone else's life. Tommy was his father's son in every way that mattered, carrying forward that legacy of selfless love even as he sold off the physical reminders of their time together. Then came that Tuesday in October, when the autumn wind carried with it the scent of impending winter and the whisper of approaching change. The morning had started like any other Tommy at his post, arranging and rearranging his dwindling inventory, trying to make his remaining stock look as appealing as possible. The wind had picked up, scattering fallen leaves across his display, creating an unintentional autumn decoration that he decided to leave in place. He was reorganizing his stock, carefully arranging a set of vintage Star Wars figures, when a shadow fell across his table. Joe Rogan stood there, hands in the pockets of his jacket, studying the scene before him with those intense eyes that had interviewed presidents and philosophers. Tommy recognized him immediately. Sarah used to love watching clips from his show during her better days in the hospital, particularly enjoying the way he could make complex topics accessible and interesting. Even in her weakened state, she would light up when Rogan would bring on scientists to discuss new medical breakthroughs, holding on to hope that somewhere in those conversations lay the key to her recovery. "What's your best item?" Rogan asked, crouching down to eye level with Tommy, showing the same genuine interest he brought to his interviews with world leaders and scientific experts. Tommy didn't hesitate. He reached into his special box, a fireproof case his father had given him for his most precious possessions, and pulled out his pride and joy. A first-edition Spider-Man comic book, still sealed in its protective sleeve, its pages holding not just a superhero story but the memory of countless hours spent with his father, learning about character, responsibility, and the price of doing what's right. "It was my dad's," he explained, his voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. "He gave it to me before he passed, said it would be worth something someday." Rogan held the comic carefully, respectfully, recognizing both its monetary value and the weight of its emotional significance. "And you're selling it?" "My sister's worth more." Those 4 words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning, carrying the kind of truth that cuts through all pretense and goes straight to the heart. Rogan looked at the comic, then at Tommy, then at the sign with its carefully printed message. "Tell me about your sister," he said softly, with the same intensity he brought to his most important interviews. And Tommy did. He told him about Sarah's laugh, how it could light up a room even now, even through the pain and exhaustion of treatment. He told him about her dreams of becoming a doctor to help other kids like me, about how she would practice by giving her stuffed animals checkups and writing prescriptions in crayon. He told him about the experimental surgery that could save her life, and about the insurance company that had decided her life wasn't worth the risk. But more than that, he told him about Sarah's spirit, how she never complained, how she worried more about their mother's exhaustion than her own pain, how she would insist on Tommy reading to other kids in the pediatric ward when she was too tired to listen herself. Rogan listened, really listened, in that way that had made him famous. But more than that, he heard the things Tommy wasn't saying. The fear behind the bravery, the exhaustion behind the determination, the love that drove it all. He heard the story of a family pushed to the brink by circumstance but refusing to break, of a community doing what it could but needing help to do more, of a healthcare system that sometimes lost sight of the human beings behind the policy numbers. What happened next would become the stuff of local legend, a moment when the power of modern media met the timeless power of human compassion. Rogan didn't just buy the comic book. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Right there on the street corner, he asked Tommy to tell his story again, this time to the millions who followed him online. And as Tommy spoke, his young voice steady and clear, something extraordinary began to happen. The video went viral before Tommy had even packed up his stand for the day. By evening, it had reached every corner of the internet, touching hearts and opening wallets across the globe. Rogan's followers, moved by the raw authenticity of Tommy's devotion to his sister, began sharing it with their own networks. Celebrities retweeted it. News outlets picked it up. A GoFundMe page, set up by Rogan's team, started climbing at a dizzying rate. But Rogan wasn't done. He invited Tommy and Maria onto his podcast, giving them a platform to share their story in full. For 3 hours, they talked about Sarah's fight, about the broken healthcare system that had forced a 12-year-old boy to sell his treasures, about the power of community and the strength of familial love. The conversation went deep into issues of healthcare access, the impact of medical debt on families, and the extraordinary ways ordinary people rise to meet seemingly impossible challenges. The response was overwhelming, a tsunami of support that swept away the barriers that had seemed so insurmountable just days before. Donations poured in from around the world, from dollar bills to corporate pledges. Medical professionals reached out offering their services, some flying in from other countries to consult on Sarah's case. The insurance company, faced with mounting public pressure and the spotlight of media attention, reversed their decision. Sarah would get her surgery, and more importantly, she would get a fighting chance. But the true miracle wasn't in the money raised or the medical bills covered. It was in the way Tommy's story touched something deep in the collective consciousness of all who heard it. In a world often divided by politics and ideology, here was a pure truth that everyone could recognize. The love of a brother for his sister, the determination of a child to move mountains, the power of community to lift up its own. Tommy's stand became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in our most cynical age, the human heart remains capable of extraordinary things. The surgery was scheduled for December, just before Christmas. Tommy insisted on keeping his stand open until then, not for the money anymore, but because it had become a symbol of hope for the neighborhood. People would stop by just to talk, to share their own stories of struggle and triumph, to remind themselves that even in the darkest times, light can break through. His table became a gathering place for the community, a spot where strangers became friends, and where the barriers between people seemed to dissolve in the face of shared humanity. On the day of Sarah's surgery, the waiting room at Boston Children's Hospital was filled with familiar faces from Carson Street. The newsstand owner brought magazines. The coffee shop sent over endless cups of hot chocolate. The tough guys from O'Malley's showed up in suits, looking uncomfortable but determined to show their support. Even some of Rogan's listeners had shown up, holding signs with messages of support, having flown in from across the country to be part of this moment. The surgery lasted 12 hours. 12 hours of prayers, of held breaths, of coffee cups emptied and refilled. Tommy sat between his mother and Joe Rogan, who had rearranged his entire schedule to be there, his hands clutching his father's rosary beads. When the doctor finally emerged, tired but smiling, the cheer that went up could be heard 3 floors down. Sarah would live. The experimental procedure had been a success. Today, Sarah is back in school, her curls growing back, her dreams of becoming a doctor stronger than ever. She's already started a support group for other kids fighting similar battles, sharing her story and spreading the hope that helped her survive. Her weekly meetings in the hospital's activity room have become a beacon of light for families facing similar struggles. She sits there, sometimes still tired from her ongoing recovery, but her eyes shine with the same determination that once burned in her brother's. Tommy's table still comes out sometimes, but now it's used for lemonade stands and bake sales, raising money for other families facing similar battles. He's become something of a local celebrity, but more importantly, he's become a symbol of what love can accomplish. The corner of Carson and West Broadway has been unofficially renamed Tommy's Corner by the neighborhood, and a small plaque commemorates the spot where a boy's love for his sister moved the world. The Spider-Man comic hangs framed in their living room. Rogan had bought it for an astronomical sum, but insisted Tommy keep it. Some things, Keith said, are worth more than money. Next to it hangs a photo from Sarah's first day back at school, her smile radiant, Tommy standing protective at her side. their mother beaming behind them. There's a picture of victory, not just over illness, but over despair itself. The story of Tommy Sullivan and his toy stand has become more than just a viral moment or a successful fundraiser. It's become a movement. The Tommy Sullivan Foundation, established with help from Rogan and other supporters, now helps families navigate the complex world of medical insurance appeals and provides emergency assistance to those facing similar situations. The foundation's motto, borrowed from Tommy's own words, reads simply, "Some things are worth any price." But perhaps the most profound change is invisible in any foundation or fundraiser. It's in the way the community has been transformed. The regulars at O'Malley's Pub now run an annual toy drive for the Children's Hospital. Mrs. O'Leary's coffee shop has become an unofficial support center for families dealing with medical crises. Mr. Patel keeps a donation jar on his counter, matching every dollar contributed. The neighborhood has learned that they're stronger together. That community isn't just a word, but a force that can move mountains. In the end, this isn't just about a surgery that was needed or the money that was raised. It's about the power of one child's love to move the world. It's about the ripples that spread when genuine compassion meets unwavering determination. It's about the magic that happens when we stop walking past and start seeing each other, really seeing each other in all our beautiful, broken, hopeful humanity. And perhaps most importantly, it's about the price of love, not measured in dollars or cents, but in the willing sacrifice of a brother for his sister, in the hours spent standing on street corners, in the dreams sold one toy at a time. It's about the value we place on each other's lives, and the extraordinary things we're capable of when we refuse to accept that anything is impossible. Because sometimes the biggest heroes stand just 4 feet tall, and sometimes hope shows up in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a podcast host stopping at a child's table, or in the determination of a young boy who refused to let his sister's light fade from the world. This is a brother's price. Not just a story of survival, but a testament to the extraordinary power of ordinary love. In a world that often seems too busy to care, it reminds us that miracles still happen. They happen in the space between one heart and another, in the quiet determination of a child's love, in the moment when strangers become family and hope becomes reality. As Tommy would say, with that wisdom that life has etched into his young soul, some things are worth any price. And in the end, he was right. Love was worth every sacrifice, every long afternoon, every treasure sold. Because sometimes, the real treasure isn't what we hold in our hands, but what we hold in our hearts. The love that moves us to action, the hope that sustains us through dark times, and the courage to believe that even the most impossible dreams can come true. Watch this and remember, in your darkest moments, when the world seems too big and your dreams too far away, that hope can appear in the most unexpected places. And sometimes, it starts with a simple folding table on a street corner, and a boy who refused to believe in impossible odds. Because in the end, that's what love does. It refuses to accept defeat. It finds a way, it moves mountains. And in this corner of South Boston, where dreams once faded against concrete walls, a new story is being written every day. It's a story of hope, of determination, and of the extraordinary power of ordinary love. It's a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be given freely, from one heart to another, in acts of pure, unconditional love. This is a brother's price. And it's not just Tommy and Sarah's story anymore. It's a testament to what we can all become when love leads the way.